I think we'll get started. The first item on the agenda is to approve the draft November 14, 2007 board minutes.
Move the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any deletions, additions, comments? Hearing none, is there anyone in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Just want to let you know that Judge Hamill is not being able to attend the meeting today in person due to the birth of her grandchildren, twins, in California today. And she's going to be following us on live stream. Stanley Richards asked to make an announcement at this point regarding a new report from Jack on visits.
Yes. Just want to bring attention to this report. It's really an observation, an assessment from Jails Action Coalition. This report is coming out, and it really documents the experiences of people who are visiting Rikers, family members, and it really is broken out into, I think, 4 or 5 parts, with the final part being a set of recommendations to the department, a set of recommendations to the Board of Corrections about how we can continue to improve the visit experience. The department has convened a visit work group. We want that group to reconvene. We've been on hiatus for a while. We want to reconvene the group and continue the work that we've been doing. And this is a report that sort of lays out some of the things that we can do. It also documents some of the steps that were taken. But people should take a look at it. It was a really good piece of work. I actually seen a couple of the JAG members at the bus stop. They conducted surveys with visitors, and they were interviewing visitors and taking a survey. So it's informative. Take a look at it. It's a really nice report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. The next point on the agenda, we're going to have now public comment on the 5 variance votes scheduled for today. We have 3 requests from Health and Hospitals, and we have 2 from the Department of Correction. We'll begin the variance section of the meeting now with a public comment. We ask the speakers limit their comments specifically to the variances on the agenda and to 3 minutes each. The board will have an additional public comment period on all other matters at the end of today's meeting. The iPad on the stage will tell you how much time you have left. The first speaker is Jennifer Parrish.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Parrish, Director of Criminal Justice Advocacy at the Urban Justice Center Mental Health Project. First, I'll address the department's waiver request, 7-day waiver request. It's encouraging that the department has used this sparingly and that the board has reviewed the circumstances of each waiver. However, the department's failure to report the information the board requires is troubling. The board conditioned approval of the variance on this reporting, yet the department has flouted this responsibility. We are very concerned that one of the 4 people was returned to solitary confinement less than 7 days after his release from solitary was in a mental observation unit. These units are for people who need a higher level of mental health care than is provided in general population. Despite health staff determining that this person needed such treatment after the time he spent in solitary, he was returned to an environment that's proven harmful to people's mental health and appears to have been harmful to his health. The board's rules require that people with serious mental disabilities be excluded from solitary confinement and give the medical staff the authority to bar a person from placement there if the assignment would pose a serious threat to the person's physical or mental health. From the board's report, it's not clear what role Correctional Health Services played in the decision to return this person to isolating and torturous solitary confinement. The individual is not the only person who was transferred from a mental observation unit to solitary. According to DOC data, from April to September 2017, 11 people were admitted to punitive segregation at GRVC from a mental observation unit, and that does not include the 25 people who were on mental observation units before their admission to restrictive housing units. Given that almost all of the people on mental observation units are diagnosed with a serious mental illness, it's very concerning that so many were transferred to solitary and suggest that the department and CHS are not in compliance with the board's rules. We ask the board to request information from DOC and CHS about individuals who are transferred from the mental observation units to punitive SEG, including restrictive housing units, and review these cases to determine compliance with the board's rules. We oppose the variance request and ask you to vote against its extension, but if it is granted, we encourage you to condition the variance upon a requirement that Correctional Health Services document that it has assessed any person returned to solitary during the 7-day period and determined that solitary would not pose a serious threat to that person's health. Moreover, any person with mental health treatment should receive a heightened level of care while in solitary, even where their mental health issues do not meet criteria for a serious mental disability. In addition, the department should be required to include in its 60-day punitive SEG reports, which are made public, the number of waivers requested and granted, and the amount of time these individuals spent in punitive segregation in total. Currently, these reports only include information as the date of the report, and all of the last 5 reports indicate that no one was in punitive SEG for more than 30 days as of the date of the report. I just want to speak for a second about the other two of the other variances. Okay. Thank you for just a minute. Commingling, we oppose that variance request for the reasons stated in the children's rights testimony. And regarding the variances requested by CHS, we agree with the concerns that New York Lawyers for the Public Interest will voice. Specifically, we encourage you to begin rulemaking on the 14-day psychotropic medication prescription schedule. Although this variance was granted in 2005 and has been repeatedly extended, that's been done without public scrutiny or the board's evaluation of whether it meets the mental health treatment needs of incarcerated people. And given that CHS reported that 28% of the people scheduled for mental health encounters were not seen, and all of the problems documented about sick call, we believe that this practice should be subjected to the rulemaking process. Thank you.
Excuse me, Sarah. I just want to thank you for this, too. I look forward to reviewing this.
Okay, thank you. The credit goes to many
Thank you.
other people.
Thank you.
We'll proceed directly to a vote. Are there any questions or comments at the board level?
Just to respond to the concerns of New York Lawyers in Public Interest. Previously, the Department of Health had even recommended not even doing any testing and just doing screening, which this board objected to because it felt it was not an adequate approach given the rates of tuberculosis in the world and the potential rates on Rikers Island. And we had the horrible experience of the tuberculosis epidemic of the 90s. So I do think that as formulated, this is a safe procedure, the every 6 months. I appreciate the concern of New York Lawyers for Public Interest, but I think this is a reasonable approach and very consistent with all public health national recommendations on screening for tuberculosis in jails.
Does anyone want to move this?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any conditions anyone wants to recommend? So we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Reagan again.
Yes. Support.
Dr. Savior?
Yes.
Mr. Marino?
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Bryant?
Yes.
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 I'm in favor. The motion carries. Thank you. Now we go to the third variance. Third variance is allow healthcare staff to provide the Department of Correction with specific diagnoses related only to injuries sustained by prisoners while in correctional custody. Reporting of diagnoses unrelated to an injury remain prohibited. Injury information has served an essential component of DLC investigations into violent incidents. This variance has been repeatedly granted by the board since 2013. CHS requests an additional 6 months. Is there someone available to move this?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from anybody on the board? Anyone propose to suggest a condition? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote again. Mr. Reagan?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm in favor of it. Thank you very much. The proposal carries. Thanks very much to everybody here. As previously stated, we will continue to move forward with integrating these variances into the minimum standards. The next item on the agenda is this 7-day waiver, the punitive segregation 7-day waiver variance. In September 2015, the board first granted a variance from the minimum standards 1-17D2 to allow the department, in highly exceptional circumstances presenting safety concerns, to waive the requirement that people in custody be immediately released from punitive segregation for 7 days after they've been held in punitive seg for 30 consecutive days. The board has renewed this variance multiple times, each time on the condition that the chief of the department must approve each variance and state why placement in a less restrictive setting is not a safe option. The board last renewed this variance on July 11th, 2017, and this variance is to expire on January 11th, 2018. The department has asked the board to consider a 6-month renewal of this variance. As previously, the board staff has prepared and published a report on the department's use of this variance. I'll ask our executive director to provide a brief summary of the recent report. Martha?
Thanks. Since approving the variance, the board has published periodic reports. They're all published on our website. They monitor the department's use of this variance and of the 7-day waivers. I want to thank our monitoring team, and in particular Alexa Herzog, for close monitoring of the issue and for producing these valuable reports. Since the board first granted the variance in 2015, the department has granted 27 waivers and denied 9. In the last 6 months, the chief of department has approved 4 waivers. 2 of those approved waivers were granted for slashings. 1 was for participation in a gang assault resulting in serious injury, and 1 was approved after an individual brandished a weapon and then refused search procedures. Of the 27 total waivers that were granted, half of those were for slashings. The others were for assaults on staff, weapons contraband, and 1 for destroying DOC property. This data suggests that DOC is complying with the board's requirements on when and how the waivers can be used. The individuals who received 7-day waivers had spent extensive time in segregation during their time in custody, and they also had very long lengths of stay in DOC custody. On average, these individuals had spent 202 days in segregation during the current incarceration, and on average, they had been incarcerated for 517 days when they actually received the 7-day waiver. As required, the chief has approved each waiver and sent, the department has sent this documentation to the board in a timely manner. And currently, we're working with the department on improving compliance with the condition that the chief must state why a placement in a less restrictive setting is not a safe option. The Vera Institute's recent report on the department's restrictive housing practices similarly recommends that DOC determine if less restrictive housing might be appropriate prior to approving a waiver. The report recommends the department explain what other housing options were considered and the reasons why placement into less restrictive housing units were not appropriate. A variance condition today that is slightly modified makes more precise language the board's intention and the department's intention, I believe, to looking at that issue. So we'll report back on progress on that change later, should the variance be approved by the board today.
Thanks very much, Martha, for that update. Would the department like to comment at all on this variance request?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Cephas. Brian Sullivan, Bureau Chief of Security. I think as we heard earlier in the public comments and from Executive Director of the board, this variance has been used sparingly and has always been necessitated as a response to a critical security concern. We've worked closely with the board to develop the appropriate procedures for the chief's outlining of the reasons that an alternative option is not available, and we hope to continue to advance that as specified during those remarks.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
Yes.
Yeah, Reno.
I think it's really important that the department has this tool. There was very few individuals that it seems like it's being utilized with. The department is complying with, for 27 waivers for that span of time. And I'm gonna get into the board. I think they're doing what they're supposed to do. And if the department don't have that tool and can't provide security for someone who has slashed somebody, hurt somebody seriously, then I think we'd really be tying their hands to the point where our jails won't be safe. So I think it's very important we consider this when we make this vote, and I think it's a tool that they need.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move the item?
Oh,
Hold on.
is there a second?
Stanley?
Yeah, comments?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, I just wanna get this.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
second.
Okay, Dana?
Yeah, I think this is, I agree with Perino. I think this is, you look at 2 years, right? 15 and 16, 2 full years. 27 people, they had to do the waiver. I think that is the department's willingness to try to figure out what alternatives are in existence and how to better manage the population by adding in services. This is huge, particularly when you think about how many people came through the system and they only used it 27 times. So this is something we ought to celebrate, just like we ought to celebrate the low usage of restraint desk in secure.
Dr. Cohen? Dr. Cohen?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on this request for variance. I think that it's great that it is used infrequently, but its use does result in people spending hundreds of days in solitary confinement. We hear that, as Executive Director King described, people spend, that this is a group of people who spend a lot of time on Rikers Island. They spend a lot of time on solitary confinement, and those two things yield harm to people, which is why we got rid of, why we limited substantially solitary confinement, because we believe that prolonged solitary confinement is harmful. I've always felt that the department had alternatives. Right now, it has a very clear alternative in the NIC where it could keep people for the week in between. All we're saying is that the board's rule says that you get 1 week in between rather than not. And our attempt to limit the use of solitary confinement and to identify these aspects, I would vote for it if it were required to do it and the department were doing it. But right now, I have not seen, in discussions to date, I have not seen that the department is looking for alternatives. When they are, then I'll change my vote on this. I'm going to be voting against it.
Any other comments?
Because the department has safe alternatives, not because, like I said, like the new NIC.
We're not gonna have debate from the floor, okay? We're just not gonna have that. If you can sign up, you can make your comments at the appropriate time, but we're not having debate from the floor. Are there any other comments here on the board? Okay, we're gonna take a vote on this? Oh, one condition, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'll just read the existing condition, which has been slightly modified, the language. During the pendency of this variance, the chief of department shall approve all waivers in writing. Her approval must specify her reason for granting or denying the request, what other housing options were considered, and why each was not a safe option. Immediately after the chief's decision is made on a request, the department shall send to the board the request and the chief's decision.
Do we need to vote separately on the condition?
Yes.
Do we need the department to respond to that condition?
Would you just,
Real quick,
Yeah.
would it be possible to change that for within 24 hours to make such kind of specific analysis of kind of housing areas would probably take more time to get information as opposed to immediately
After
giving
the
24
chief.
hours to kind of provide that information?
24 hours sounds immediate to me, but
Well, it's
Yeah, we didn't put a time
That's right.
frame. We just sort of,
So you're proposing 24 hours?
that seems like more than
if immediately is open, I just
Can we read it again, Martha?
Jeff is speaking in reference to the last sentence. Immediately after the chief's decision is made, the department shall send to the board the request and the chief's decision.
as always, if the board is an understanding of what that means and open to kind of some of the restraints that may happen within the chief's office to do that, then
Yeah.
that's fine. We can accept it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. So it stands the way it is.
Any
Vote.
comment, questions on the variance? If not, we'll take a roll call vote on that.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
yes.
We're just voting now on the conditions.
Right.
Condition.
Yes. Okay, now we will vote on the variance with the condition. Once again, the roll call from the end. Unless there's questions on the comments on the board level, we can take a roll call vote. We're voting for the variance now with the condition.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
The programming space at GMDC, programming space at RNDC, health and mental health, and working with our staff collaboratively with the education staff and having community engagement. All of these staff working together is what creates the success for that population, not the building. Internally, the announcement of the closure will allow ample opportunity to more efficiently deploy staff, reduce overtime, improve working conditions across the board for all of our staff, increase training, catch up on in-service training that has fallen behind, speed up our Nunez training and our specialized training as needed and requested. We'll have a new class that just started this week that will be coming out in the beginning of the summer, allowing us to then utilize savings from the closing of the facility to significantly enhance our training efforts.
Excuse me, Commissioner. So this will not affect head count?
No. No. We are suffering no layoffs from this. Every effort will be made to allow those who want to continue working with this population to do so within limits of their union contracts. There will still be a young adult units only, where staff can continue to use the skills and training and culture change that they've experienced at GMDC. More staff available for post and high classification housing units, whether in young adults only units or others, will improve our results and increase safety for our staff and inmates. So while I make these remarks to formally explain our closure of GMDC, I also want to reaffirm our commitment to the plan, and we have no change in plans to the young adult program. So I ask that you vote in favor of commingling to allow us to move forward with this closure and maintain safety and security for everyone inside our jails. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Commissioner. Any questions from the board that you would like to ask the Commissioner on this, or any comments? from the
Yeah,
board?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Marina.
Question.
Okay, I definitely agree with the commingling. It gives the department the opportunity or the way of being able to separate people in a safe way. Being the commanding officer in both EMTC and RNDC, I know for a fact we've always had problems with programming space. Being the chief, when we were developing GMDC, a lot of money, a lot of plans went into making programming space for young adults huge. Neither facility has the programming space that GMDC has. So I would like to see coming up to the summer plans on developing space for programming space in both RNDC and EMTC, because at this point, I don't believe that the programming space that's there right now is adequate for the amount of progress that the department has done in the last few years for the young adult population and trying to get our young adults going back into the community with the tools needed to not to come back. So, that's what I would like to see coming up, space developed in RNDC and EMTC, because I'm here to tell you that the programming space that's now is not adequate for the amount of explosion that you guys have done, and I say that as a comment, that you've done for the young population in the last few years. It's been incredible. So I really think that, with the SCOC having to approve plans before you can even do construction and make space, I think someone should be aggressively looking into the program space that's needed to continue the program.
Thanks, Mr. Friend.
Just as a response, currently RNDC has more program space than GMDC, and when the young adults leave, when the adolescents leave the island in October, more program space will be open to the young adults who move into that area. And so we believe that the space that we have for the school and other programming is adequate for that population, for the 18-year-olds currently.
And my question regards sort of the facility repairs. What is the plan to ensure that the facility, we have adequate lock-in cells, like the facility is up to par, so we don't have to sort of fix it as we, when young people get there.
For RNDC?
Yes.
So we're looking at all of our priority issues right now. The Sustainability Unit is working with the Office of Policy Compliance and our facility management and our maintenance folks to make sure that everything is where it should be once we move the young adults into that facility.
Let's go.
Yeah. Have you projected capital costs for this project, training costs for the staff, and also how are you going to provide for yourselves, most importantly, and for the board, demonstrating the actual program use by individual within the facilities?
So the capital costs are built into the facility maintenance priority plans each year in the budget, so we already have those. We knew what the deficiencies were, and they're present, and we're working on them.
So there's no change, given that you're moving the young adults into RNDC?
To fix the deficiencies, we were already aware of them, so we're already working on them.
And program stuff you're saying is more of it, like the library, for example, which...
We have more program space currently at RNDC than at GMDC.
And the library is not leaking?
Pardon me?
The library is not leaking.
I'm not aware that the library is leaking.
The
But I can
library,
get
the
back to
library
you
has
on
had a crisis with...
But that would be on the priority list, then, right?
Yes.
Any other, so here's what we need to do now. We need to have someone to move this. This is for the basic variance, and then a second, and then we can see if there are any proposed conditions. Is there a motion?
Move the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good, thank you. So we're now, so that's the variance in its basic form. Any conditions that anyone wants to propose?
There's one existing condition on the variance, which reads, during the pendency of this variance, the department shall provide the board with a monthly census showing in which housing units and jails 18 to 21-year-olds are housed, and the department shall continue to A, provide the board with a monthly progress report on its implementation of the young adult plan, and implementation of alternatives to punitive segregation, i.e. second chance, true, and secure units, and B, provide its progress report for each month on the 10th business day of the following month.
Question, Mark, on a condition. Was there a reason why there are 3 additional punitive, I would say, punitive areas for your young adults, ESH 1, 2, and 3? Is there a reason why the reporting is not included in this?
So I was only doing the IEs, so not everything, but I believe ESH is in the report. Is that correct?
So there's no need to change that? Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, there are 6 different housing opportunities.
Any other questions at the board? Any other comments at the board level? So now we can take a vote on the variance with the existing condition. Mr. Reagan?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Tapia?
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you very much. The variance carries.
I'll do the next.
Yeah, go ahead.
So our agenda today also includes announcing the most recent report from the board staff, which is on the topic of lockdowns in the city's jails. The report was published on the website this morning. Department policy permits staff to lock down housing areas and facilities to investigate violence, avoid violence, conduct searches, or restore order. During a lockdown, people in custody must be in their cell, and all movement, services, and programming cease. Lockdowns hinder DOC's and correctional health's ability to meet the minimum standards. As a security response that impacts a large number of people, a large number of services, lockdowns also contribute to perceptions of unfair and excessive punishment, frustrations, and tensions in the facilities. This has been a priority concern for the board. Our monitoring staff often intervene on and note the barriers to minimum standards compliance and facility tensions caused by lockdowns, frequent lockdowns. Lockdowns and their impact are also the source of frequent complaints to us from people in custody, family members, and advocates. In today's report, you will see that while the city saw a 32% decrease in the DOC's population since 2008, there has been an 88% increase in the use of lockdowns. Other key findings include that there were close to 2,400 lockdowns in 2017. From 2016 to 2017, there was a 32% increase in lockdowns. OBCC was the facility both in 2016 and 2017 with the most lockdowns. In 2017, 21% of all lockdowns in the system occurred at OBCC. 4 facilities, RNDC, West Facility, OBCC, and Brooklyn House, more than doubled their lockdowns from 2016 to 2017. And uses of force, inmate tension, and inmate-on-inmate fights are the 3 top reasons cited for lockdowns in 2017. I want to thank BOC's research team, and in particular Fortuna Howe, Nashla Ravas Salas, and Jim Bennett under Emily Turner's leadership for shedding extraordinary light on a topic that we often discuss with not a lot of data here in this forum. There is no other public analysis of the magnitude or the use of jail or prison lockdowns in the country. Using data in this report and future reports, we anticipate a very productive conversation with DOC about evaluating the impact of lockdowns. We will discuss this report, the results of an additional BOC audit on lockdown reporting forms, and also hear DOC's responses and plans that have been in place and will be in place to address lockdowns at the February or March meeting. That was what I wanted to say today. If we are going to talk about this at a future meeting, but if there's anything else you want to state today, okay. Well, we will move on. Thank you. Thanks.
So now we have another report from you, Arthur, on the sexual abuse and sexual harassment in the correctional facilities
Okay.
minimum standards.
So